Good day, friends, and welcome to our Power is Within podcast. I'm your host, Jasmine, and my mission for this podcast is to inspire you to take your power back and to realize that you are the healer that you have been looking for all along. We are capable of healing in mind, in body, and in soul. Today's episode is all about human design. And as a heads up, if this concept of human design is completely new to you, then you might be confused through this episode. So my suggestion to you would be to hit pause, go back and listen to episode 98 first with Erin Claire Jones, where she will go into more depth about what human design actually is. And then she actually will go over the four main types that we find in human design and the various strategies for decision making that we have within each type. I would also recommend looking up your human design chart so that you can see what your type and strategy and authority is, so that when you follow along in today's episode, you will be able to understand what is applicable specifically to you. Check out the show notes. I will have a link to episode 98 as well as just a way to get a free human design chart so that you have access to that information to follow along with. And today's episode, for those of you that are familiar with human design and already know your chart, it will heavily focus on generators and the manifesting generators, which will make up around 70% of the population. So this episode will be super valuable for anyone who is a generator or a manifesting generator. But I do believe that you will also find value in it if you live with, work with, or are in any type of relationship with some sort of generator, which chances are you are probably surrounded by generators or manifesting generators in your life, since how they do make up 70% of the population. So yeah, with that said, our guest today is Kalie. She is the creator and owner of Expand and Flow. And Kalie has been practicing living her design, and she's a generator. I am also a generator, so this makes for a really fun, just juicy generator discussion today. The difference for us is in our decision-making process is that she has what's called sacral authority, which gives her truth in the now, where I have emotional authority and I have no truth in the now. And as mentioned, a lot of this will be discussed more later as the dialogue unfolds. But there's also going to be in our discussion today a heavy emphasis on how to honor our design in our career choices. So whether that is a career in entrepreneurship where we are building a business and our own boss, or whether or not we choose to enter into the corporate world and be an employee, she gives some really wonderful insight into this that is helping and supporting people to live and honor their design in their career and or business spectrum of their life is something she's passionate about. So yeah, we do get into that. And also, speaking of the business aspect, make sure you do reference the show notes where Kalie does give a gift to anyone tuned in today with a 10% off code for any business flow session with her. So onward, let's welcome her to the show. Kalie, thanks so much for being here with me today and everybody who will be tuned in listening.
I'm so happy to be here, Jasmine. I'm really excited for the conversation that we're going to flow through. And it's so fun already learning that you are a generator like myself. So I think we're going to be exchanging a lot of juicy sacral life force throughout this conversation.
A buzzing conversation, sacral buzz. Yeah, and I also noticed that we both have 4 lines in our profile, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
So hopefully at some point through the dialogue, for people who are still a little bit more new to human design, we'll break that down and they'll kind of understand what we're talking about here. But what I would love to start out with is just for you to actually have the floor to share a little bit about yourself and what led you, like, discovering human design. And then I'm really curious about how long you've been experimenting with your design, and particularly what led you down the path to begin to really shift your focus on human design from a business or career perspective.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So I connected with human design from the mind. And once people become exposed to human design, we learn that we are not meant to allow the mind to lead our decision-making process throughout life. So I was connected to the system in 2018 after listening to a podcast episode. I pulled up my chart online. It was very new at the time. So there was, in terms of, I didn't really see any resources online. I didn't really see anybody talking about it. So I input my birth date, time, location, got this body graph. It looked like gibberish to me. I saw my energy type was generator, which is about 35% of the population and also the most common energy type. And I was like, what? I'm not common. So I just set the system aside and continued down my own personal path of both self-discovery and personal development through mental health, like healing modalities, somatics, and allowed the system to come back into my life organically about 18 months ago. And where I was at that point in my life was I had been building a career that was not an authentic expression of myself, but I had been dedicated to it for about 8-9 years. And my career was in the corporate accounting and finance space. I have a lot of ambitious energy in my chart. And so I was able to apply my sacral energy to that career path because society had conditioned me into believing that job safety and security and making a lot of money are all things that make me good, whole, and worthy. And those are things that I should value. And so I was working really, really hard and actually in a state of burnout that became chronic and was starting to have like pretty severe health ramifications. And I was contemplating like the effects of that and what that means. And like, am I really in an aligned career? Like this is manifesting in my body. This is confusing because this is what I'm like society's telling me that I should want for myself, but it just doesn't feel right. So I was contemplating just a full pivot away, didn't know what into, but at the same time, the company that I was working for at the time had a huge project opportunity for me that was like the kind of like holy grail, like project opportunity that somebody would want with my like ideal career path to CFO in mind. And so they offered this project to me. I had the weekend to think about it. I had a very strong visceral like gut contraction. The project was offered on a Friday. I was driving to dinner that evening to meet friends, and this gut contraction was so strong and overpowering my senses that I at one point contemplated like pulling over to the side of the road just to kind of like be with my body and try to discern what was going on. But I didn't know about my sacral authority at the time. And not only what it was, but that it was something that I was meant to rely upon. And so I did everything that I could to distract myself from what I was feeling in my body that weekend. I got a massage, which didn't even really help. I had conversations with family and friends about whether it would conceptually or rationally or logically make sense to take this project. And we ended up kind of reaching a group consensus that it would make sense. And so the following Monday, I said yes to this project. And the next workout that I did a couple days later ended up triggering a very serious unfolding of health complications associated with COVID, and ended up becoming quite critically ill, and was on bed rest for about 3 months, and has taken over 12 months to fully come back into homeostasis in the body. A lot of nervous system re-regulation, and it was a very sobering moment. And shortly after becoming bedridden, essentially, human design came back into my life. And it was the perfect moment, because I was able to read right away about what it means to be a generator, and that we're really meant to be utilizing our energy in satisfying and energizing ways throughout the day, and to be separating ourselves and minimizing or eliminating anything that feels depleting, draining, burning us out, any of those things. And that I also have what's called sacral authority, and our authority in human design is how we make decisions. And my authority or inner compass speaks to me through my gut. And so I had, to date, the most powerful sacral no that I've ever experienced. But because I did not know about human design, and I did not know that I could rely upon my body's cues in the ways that it was trying to convey, I was taught that the mind is the be all end all. And so I went against my inner authority, and my story just happens to be an extreme example of what can happen. But it was really what I needed at that point in my life to shake me awake, and to shake me out of the matrix, so to speak, of this hyper productivity hustle culture that so many of us are unconsciously subscribed to, and has allowed me and empowered me to begin and implement and sustain a way of living that's much more in alignment with who I am authentically. And I'm so passionate about it. Now I'm helping people not only learn how to understand themselves through the lens of human design, but also begin thinking about, once we have that information, how are we applying it not only to our daily energy management, but it gives insight into what your purpose or your vocation is in this lifetime, that can be of the greatest service to the collective. And what feels in greatest service to the collective is what feels most natural to you. So it's a win-win. And I'm currently focused on helping people who are in the midst of a career transition to be able to understand their gifts and how those translate into how they apply it in everyday life through the lens of human design. And then I'm also helping entrepreneurs and business owners leverage their human design to build an expression of themselves through this modality of business that feels really good and authentic, and enables them to sustain it with ease. That's the goal.
That's awesome. So you really like you took a long time for you to fully get like feel better
Yeah.
after that really hard decision where you went against your gut.
Yes.
But you didn't end up doing the job, right? Because you were so sick, you were in bed.
Correct. Yep. So I actually was forced out on medical leave.
So yeah, sometimes, I mean, the universe sometimes has a way of saying, hey, if you're not going to make the right decision for you, like we're done. Like the body's like, we're done with this. We're going to make you do something different.
Yep, exactly.
Can you give some just examples throughout the last 18 months of the positive shifts you've experienced in your own life and just what the process was like for you to really begin to dive into, learn, understand your design, but most importantly, experiment with it, try it on, and actually begin to understand what it means to live it?
Yeah. So I think the biggest positive shift is that it's helped me have a relationship with my body, like the whole sensory experience of my body. Because once we look at a human design body graph, there's 9 energy centers in the body graph. Understanding which of yours you have open or defined gives insight into where you're more sensitive to absorbing and amplifying the energy of others versus where you're more fixed and consistent in your own definition. And so I think just having energetic awareness of where I have openness and sensitivity to other people's energy has enabled me to have, I think, much more connected, easeful relationships, both in my personal life and in my work communications. I think human design helps us have better interpersonal understanding of each other's unique needs. And then I would say like the biggest positive shift beyond the relationship with my body is that I feel purposeful. I feel that life has meaning. I understand what that meaning is. I'm able to connect to that meaning in every moment of the day. It's a choice, really, to allow ourselves to drop into that. But human design is really just given language to what my role is in service to humanity, how and sort of a system of guidance of how to implement that and apply that. And if we're following our strategy and authority, then that unfolds organically, which is really beautiful. We don't have to effort or think or strategize our way into what that means. But just kind of understanding my zone of genius, if you will, has created very profound shifts. It's basically like helping us all stay in our lanes, know what our lanes are, and the byproduct of that is living a much more easeful, purposeful life that's filled with a lot more flow and a lot less effort, hustle, and force.
At what point did you decide in this journey, it sounds like it was about 12 months of like really learning and beginning embodying it and allowing your body to heal. When did you decide that you were like, I'm going to make this a career? Like this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to share this message.
Yeah. So when I was on bed rest, like I said, kind of human design came back into my life. It was exactly like the wisdom that I needed to receive in that moment. And then I was like, okay, this is really interesting. I'm going to order a book. And I ordered a book on understanding the energy centers in human design. It was about a 400-page book. When it arrived, I started reading the book. I felt a sacral expansion, like buzzing, excitement that I hadn't felt in many, many months, and leaned into that and ended up reading and digesting this entire book in a day. Like, I was just so turned on by it. And like, that's like really the power of like the sacral center, is like when something is really in alignment for you, and for generators specifically, like you can achieve mastery very quickly. And I mean, human design, it takes time to study. I don't want to oversimplify it, that reading one book in one day is means that somebody is now trained to be able to provide readings or whatever. But it was the doorway into something that became something that I wanted to explore as a career path. And the interesting thing is, coming back to what I shared in my story, is about kind of my career path up until the point that human design found me, is when I was in college, I loved psychology. I loved understanding why we are the way we are, how that impacts how we interact with others, sociology, all of that. But I had been very good in school, kind of in all subjects. This is the line 2 aspect of the profile. And so I was pre-business, and I thought, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I thought maybe marketing, wasn't really sure. And I was, as part of my pre-business requirements, I had to take a couple accounting classes, and I did really well in them without really applying myself. And so they sent a letter home, the school sent a letter home to my parents, encouraging their daughter to declare accounting as my major and to pursue that. And so then there was conversations that were had about that. And so psychology, and I was also quite interested in philosophy, that took a back seat. Because it was like, okay, Kalie, like this is something that you're good at. This is what the school is telling you. Like, then it was my family telling me. And I knew that there was both job security and kind of a well-defined career path available to me through pursuing accounting and finance. So this, inner Kalie that is so passionate about helping people understand themselves and what that means for how they, actualize and live in the world, like that was set aside for a number of years. And so this human design was really just, I think, a doorway into unleashing really like who I've always been. And that's like what human design is helping us remove the layers of conditioning that we pick up from the moment that we're born. And we receive it from our family, our education systems, our broader cultural backgrounds, the countries that we live in, the time period and human evolution that we live in. And like, I don't think anyone is consciously or intentionally wanting us to disconnect from ourselves, but it's just the current environment that we're living in. And I think human design is a beautiful tool to help us deconstruct that and create something new in its place. And I see it happening. I have channel 4253 in my chart, which is really about understanding cycles from a collective standpoint. And I really do think that we're shifting out of a time period where there's a lot of emphasis on patriarchal values, power structures, hierarchies, things like that. And people are waking up to say like, hey, actually, I am whole and sovereign within, and I want to exist in a world where that is the leading value. And we begin rebuilding societal structures, familial structures, global structures, monetary structures that support that notion. And I think that human design really is a tool that is going to help shift things on a global level. It already is.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I love it. That's why I have you here. um, so you read a book and then you were like, okay, my sacral center is lighting up. This could be something. This could be something I want to pursue. And then I imagine you learned more, maybe took classes, read more books, got some readings done for yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And at what point, because I know we were talking about this offline, how sometimes some of us get really excited about something and we can think that we just need to know everything right away, but we never actually but human design is meant to be embodied, experimented, like lived. And so I see it happen over and over and over again where people just get initially super excited, especially, and I'm guilty of this. Especially people in like the chronic pain, chronic illness community who just want to like learn everything because they think it could help them heal, or get better or fix them. It'll fix them. And I see a lot of people that like learn a little bit about it and it gets them excited, but then they just immerse themselves in the study or the learning, wanting to just get more information, but never actually really trying it on, never actually really understanding what it means to experiment with their strategy and authority and actually witness the magic that can happen from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So first of all, if anyone listening has an experience of that, like, I just want to validate that that's completely normal. Like that, again, it goes back to like, what is society valuing and instilling in us? And right now it's that knowledge is power and that information is power. And that if I know it and it's in my mind, then my mind feels safe. And then, we're reinforcing that idea that the mind is supreme. And to really move beyond the conceptual understanding, human design has to be experimented with. And as Chasmith is saying, strategy and authority is like the foundational pieces that you're experimenting with your chart in the beginning. And for both of us, our strategy is to respond to life, and we're responding through that sacral center located in the gut. And then authority, you and I vary. I have sacral authority, you have emotional authority. But authority is how you make decisions. So you're experimenting with how you're engaging with external stimuli in your environment. And then you're experimenting with how you make decisions. And so it takes time to unwind years upon years upon years of conditioning of I'm engaging with external stimuli in my environment with my mind. My mind is what I'm giving authority to, and then I'm using my mind to make decisions. And it doesn't happen overnight. What we say in human design is that these changes of deconditioning need to take place at a cellular level, and it takes time for us to rewire the circuitry in not only our brains, but I think really like the sensory connections throughout the entire body to be the physical expression of the template of our design. Because that's really what I think, how I think about the human design chart is it's like an archetypal template of who you are on an individual level, but you have choice in how you express that. And if you're expressing it authentically or you're expressing from conditioning. And so kind of to your question, how do people begin experimenting with it? Like, learn about your strategy and authority and actually give yourself exercises where you're experimenting with that. So I have sacral authority, and I feel grateful that my authority is able to respond in the now moment, and it responds with like a yes or a no. So I can experiment with when I'm looking at like an agenda of things that I'm going to work on for the day. Like I have content prepping. I have to go get groceries. Like I might check in with my body, check in with my sacral center and ask, do I want to work on content first, or do I want to go to the grocery store first? And wait to feel what's happening in the body and what it's communicating to me, and then lean into and follow through with that. And where we can get ourselves into trouble, even when we're beginning to experiment with our human design, is if we're kind of gaining a sensory experience of what our authority feels like in our body. But for whatever reason, the mind feels safer to kind of override that and make a different decision, or we don't follow through. But the whole purpose of human design is learning to come into trust with ourselves of what it means to kind of surrender beyond the mind, drop in, trust the mechanics of our chart. And like the beauty of human design is more opportunities come to you, more aligned opportunities come to you, more aligned relationships come into your life, more aligned work, everything, and your energy flows through your entire body with much more ease. You're no longer swimming upstream against the current of life. Living your design enables you to begin moving downstream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wanted to also mention and highlight for anyone listening, because this is a thing too that can happen. You mentioned, like, when we first start this experiment, we're dealing with, an entire lifetime of conditioning that we're going to begin to decondition. And you gave such a great example of how we have gotten so conditioned to use our mind with the external forces. Like we've gotten so in our heads that we like rely on our mind to make all the decisions. So to drop into the body and trust the body. I mean, and I know that not everyone's strategy and authority is regarding the sacral center. I just want to highlight that we're speaking specifically to generators right now. But it's such a great example. If I'm used to using my mind, but then I get a powerful, like visceral, like in my body. Well, I mean, it happens all the time where the mind goes, oh, but that's not logical, or that's not rational, or that doesn't make any sense. And we sometimes, like turn against ourselves because the body is like very clear, but it just doesn't feel rational, which is what we're so used to going with or going off of, that we can sometimes, like you just said, like kind of not trust the body response, or there's like a pressure, societal pressure, like, oh, you're not being rational, or you're like, you have to explain yourself, and you're like, oh, everything in my body says to go do this, but like I can't explain to you why, because there's no words to explain it. It's just a feeling. So I just wanted to say that that's like also perfectly normal, that people could really initially, I think it, like for me, it took a lot of back and forth. Like some days I would trust my gut, some days I couldn't. It was like my mind was too strong, or I think what happens that I see a lot too is people give up too soon because we're so conditioned to not rely on the authority. Maybe we don't even have a relationship with whatever our authority is yet, our decision making, strategy, that it's hard to adapt to it. Like a good example, and you can speak to this, is, and maybe you have some good examples of how to overcome this. But like I know for myself and many generators, we aren't even connected or in tune with that sacral center. So we've spent our whole life in our heads. So I'm like, when we're like, oh, this sacral center thing, oh, I don't even know. Like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what feels good. I don't know what feels juicy. I'm supposed to follow my bliss, but I don't even know what that feels like anymore. Do you have ideas for how people could really reconnect with that sacral center and really start to strengthen it so that it does become the louder voice?
Yeah, so many. So I'll just share a couple. But I would say, first of all, developing a relationship with that part of the body, because actually that part of the body, that place just below the belly button, that place can be a sensitive part of the body for many people. And so just allowing ourselves to kind of just sit by ourselves in our own energy, and maybe that's like putting your hands on your belly, or just like dropping into and seeing if you can feel kind of it's called, in somatics, it's called interoceptive awareness. So when we have an awareness of sensation that's happening inside of the body, that's called interoceptive awareness. And everybody has that. We're able to strengthen it. An example of something that we all have interoceptive awareness of throughout the day, is like whether or not we're hungry or potentially thirsty. So just feeling into that part of the body is really what you're looking to begin strengthening. But examples of how you can play with that is an exercise that I give clients who are feeling disconnected from their sacral centers is if they have the physical means to go outside for a walk, take themselves on a sacral strengthening walk. And what that means is that you get outside of your home or your apartment or wherever you live, and once your feet are on the ground outside, you allow your body to begin guiding you where you're going on this walk. So you don't know your mind does not know where you're going on the walk. You're letting your sacral or your body take you on the walk. And so if you come up to like the first T on the sidewalk, you ask your sacral center, your gut, do I want to go right or left? Because it can answer with like a yes or no, or essentially a this or a that. And just follow that and keep following that, and just take yourself on a walk and see where you end up. Because that exercise in and of itself is so powerful in helping your mind see, I am safe to trust where my body is leading me. And you'll probably be very pleasantly surprised with like where you end up on this walk. You might end up at like your favorite coffee shop, who knows? And then another exercise that people can play with that doesn't involve movement is most often the reason that we can't feel the sacral center, or that we're not experiencing that buzzing, excitement, expansiveness throughout the day is because we've inundated ourselves with a bunch of stuff that's misaligned for us. So basically, the sacral center is like an engine, if you will, and it needs to be filled with the energetically correct fuel. And so if we're engaging with tasks, eating food that's incorrect for us, engaging in certain relationships or having conversations that are filling up our bodies with a lower fuel grade than our body would prefer to have, then eventually, we're going to need to run a maintenance check on that. And the best way to implement a maintenance check on the sacral center is to begin removing things that you quickly know are depleting, draining, burning you out, in some way dissatisfying, so that you're creating spaciousness then for your sacral to speak to you.
I love that. I love how you explain that. And I love the whole analogy you just gave. That's so much fun. And it's so true. It's so true. We have to sometimes create space. And that makes me actually think about something else. A lot of times when we first begin this experiment, you gave this other great analogy about how when we're really beginning to embody our design, it allows us to no longer like fight upstream, but to like flow downstream. And I think what happens if we're so used to swimming upstream and pushing and trying to control and trying to mentally decide everything, and then we get told, oh, you're actually a generator, you're here to wait to respond, or you're a projector, you're here to wait to be invited, that can feel really scary and intimidating. And I think that's where a lot of people also get hung up, is being willing to be patient enough to start to allow the magic from the universe unfold, because it's got to do some unwinding of the way you used to interact. It's like it got so used to you pushing and trying to be in control and mentally think through everything, that it's like it actually is going to take a minute for it to begin to realize like, oh, she's actually slowing down, she's beginning to wait, she wants to like work in collaboration.
Yep.
So I think just like highlighting like, hey, just being patient and trusting, and I always tell everybody, like, give it 6 months, just try it on. Like, then you get to witness whether or not it's something that is you're seeing the power of in your own life.
Yep. Yeah, it does take time to unwind. And also, we're able to really, depending on somebody's design, how they build trust with themselves and how they get their mind on board with their experiment is going to differ. And that can all be discussed in a reading with somebody or in like a coaching session. But I think that it's really important, and it's something that we can begin doing from the moment that we decide that we want to experiment with human design, is begin to get the mind on board, because the mind is the thing that is going to pull you off path, essentially. And so if we can get the mind to come into an integrative state with the mechanics of our design, which we can. It's just our mind's primary goal is to keep us safe, in the physical 3D plane. And so if we can, in small ways, begin teaching the mind that it's safe for us to rely on the mechanics of our strategy and authority, for example, then I think the deconditioning process moves through a lot easier. And I've given some examples of how you're kind of teaching the mind to get on board with trusting different sensations in the body, whatever. But if you also are able to get people that are close to you in your life, whether it's a partner, friends, whomever, to kind of support you and your individual energetic needs. For generators, since we both are generators, like it's asking our friends, family, partner to give us options, to ask us yes, no questions. And then that's also teaching the mind, that it's safe because now I have support. So things like that, I would encourage somebody to be thinking about.
Absolutely. And another thing I wanted to add on to that is, for me, what I found really supportive is also, like, it sounds so silly, but asking your partner or your friends, if you ask them if they want to like do something with you or eat something, ask them to, after they give an answer, to ask you back again. Because how often do we think that maybe, like, it's such a little example, and I know it's just little day-to-day things, but I'm of the belief that when we can practice with the little things daily, it's going to make the bigger decisions easier to approach. And so maybe I'm with a friend and I'm thinking about what would make them really happy, and I think of an idea of something to do with them because I'm like, oh, this would make this person really happy, and I say, hey, do you want to go bowling tonight? And they're like, oh yeah, but then they don't ask you back. It's not really giving your generator sacral authority something to respond to, and you don't really know at this point if that just was a thought that came from your mind versus like something you actually really wanted in your body. And it's sort of funny that somebody could actually just ask you back and then be like, do you want to go bowling? And then you're like, no, that doesn't actually even sound good to my body right now. I don't know why I asked you.
I love that.
It seems so silly, but it's so helpful, because how often do we slip into conditioned behaviors like people pleasing, and amongst a million other types of behaviors where maybe we are actually thinking and coming up with ideas through the mind rather than the body.
Yes, I absolutely love that.
Yeah. So
great example. I'm glad that you shared that. And it brings to mind like work that I do with clients, because like entrepreneurs, especially in like that first year of business, when you're beginning to identify like what your zone of genius is and how you want to express that, there's a lot of ideas that come in. And so something might feel exciting to the mind, but just speaking it out loud with a partner, like you say, or a friend, and having them ask that back to you, like, can be really clarifying. And so it can be applied like in any day-to-day decision making in any form. And I'm really glad that you brought that into the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that is where a coach is super powerful because let's be honest, sometimes your friends and family think you're wacko. Like if I ask somebody to do that for me, they're like, they just give me a blank stare, like, why on earth would I ask you back? Especially someone, say you have someone close to you in your family who isn't on board with the human design aspect of life. So it's a little more challenging, but somebody like a coach, oh gosh, like you said, especially if you're entering into business, because how often do we think that we have this great, brilliant idea, but it's like the body is like, no, no, that's not the direction. And just having a coach, literally sometimes just to be able to ask you, bounce these questions off you and help you get back to that center, and I know we're speaking predominantly today for generators, but for any of the design types, just having somebody else who understands your design, it's such good guidance essentially.
Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
um, I mean, we also need those. I think it's great to have that non-biased person too, especially for those like the mental projectors and people who literally need to speak out loud to get to what their decision is.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of business, I'd actually really love to dive into this concept of using our human design in our business, and just trying to understand when we are making a shift in our life and we are considering starting our own business. How do we like correctly align to our type and strategy in business?
Yeah. I mean, that question is in and of itself like a doorway into a much more nuanced conversation depending on somebody's design.
Uh-huh.
But how we apply our human design, whether it's in business in the form of entrepreneurship or whether it's in the way that we make money in a different vocation, job, what have you, like the way that I am thinking about how we apply human design is really how are we at a foundational level managing our energy on a daily basis in alignment with the mechanics of our energy type? How are we enabling ourselves to utilize our strategy and authority in the way that we make decisions in our jobs, in our careers, in our businesses? And with the profile piece of the design, that's beginning to give insight into the personality characteristics that you naturally express when you're in an aligned environment, and it is beginning to give insight into what your purpose is and what kind of role you're playing in service to humanity. So we're looking at fundamentals like that just as like a baseline, but I spend a lot of time going deep into people's energetic gifts through their gates and looking at the incarnation cross of the human design chart, which is really your life theme, gives insight into your unique life purpose. And then there's other pieces of the chart that give insight into what your personal brand is. And everybody has a personal brand of expression. It's not just for somebody who is an entrepreneur or a business. And this is something that I feel deeply passionate about, is empowering people to feel like they're aligned with their personal brand in any vocation. And so that like if they're operating in a corporate environment, that they are leaning into the high expression of their design, so that they're able to be in the most supportive environment possible for themselves. And if they're somebody who's thinking about wanting to ask for a raise or be promoted or that type of a thing, that they're aligning their ambitions with what role is going to enable them to be in the fullest expression of themselves. And being in the fullest expression of yourselves is going to enable the highest level of prosperity to come to you, because if you are trusting life and trusting the universe, then you're increasing your level of magnetism to be able to manifest more abundance in your reality through being more of yourself.
Mm. I love that. And I love that you bring up not just for business, but like for your own personal business, but still being in the corporate world or just working for somebody else. Because I think a lot of times, I see this happen also in like the kind of personal development and, chronic kind of healing community is I think we often think there's only one route, like we have to go in business for ourselves, like we have to be entrepreneurs. And while there's like a massive push into entrepreneurship these days more than ever, I don't want there to be an idea or a myth that we can't pursue happiness and bliss and joy still working in the corporate world or working for somebody else or working for a part of a project that's not just our own, if you will. I think sometimes people get into that mindset that they can't live their design in that realm. And you hear things like, oh, if you're not building your own dream, you're building somebody else's or something. But I don't know if that's rings totally true to me. I think as long as you're staying true to whatever is authentic and real for your design, I think there's got to be a win-win in a way that you can pursue that while supporting somebody else's endeavor as well. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree 100%. That's why I think it would be really easy for me to focus my business line with just focusing on servicing entrepreneurs. But exactly to your point, I think that the world that we want to co-create and build, which is enabling as many people as possible to feel free and sovereign and authentically expressed, that ideal comes with the understanding that not everybody today is going to be existing as some form of entrepreneurship, that there are millions of people that are existing in the corporate ecosystem, and those people are not wrong or bad or anything. It actually might be a part of their life purpose, their life theme, to be an instigator or an implementer of change in that environment. I wholeheartedly believe that. And so that's why the foundation of my business is empowering people to live authentically as themselves. And they have choice in how that expresses. And it may full well express in the corporate environment. In fact, we probably are in agreement that there's a lot of opportunity for change to be implemented at a wide scale in those environments. And I do think that it is happening. I think that it is likely going to happen on a grassroots level where there's this critical mass of individuals who are awakening to their true nature, their true selves through modalities like human design. And then they're going into environments where previously they were disempowered, and they're taking their power back, and they're speaking into what their energetic needs are. They're ensuring that those are being met on a daily basis, and they're ensuring that they're in roles that are enabling them to be in the full expression of their life purpose. And if that role doesn't exist, then something I also work with clients on is, how do we define the role that you want to be in that enables you to be in the full expression of yourself?
Yes. Yes. I love this so much. It's so true. And the reality and the truth of the matter is too, that some of us, and we know this through looking at our human design, we each as individuals aren't meant and here to do everything. So when you're looking at being an entrepreneur, there's so many ways that we can bring in and have other people help collaborate or support us, or we maybe don't have the consistent energy to do some of the tasks that are related and essential for a business of our own. And so we might be really fulfilled playing some type of other support role or some role within another type of organization.
Exactly.
As opposed to what I think sometimes happens, and I know I've personally experienced this myself, is pushing ourselves to do things that don't feel authentic because we are, again, going back to conditioning, we're kind of taught to like almost taught that it's normal to like push to do certain things if you want to get somewhere, rather than like maybe I have a passion for a certain thing, but I don't feel lit up or jazzed or happy at all when I think of the 10 other things I have to do in order to like be my own standalone personal business. And so rather than maybe pushing to do things the way that we think they're supposed to look, we can shift to actually just look into more of what is aligned to our design, and then how can we allow that in our life, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I think you actually had a post actually recently even about you had a post about 3 things that didn't help you early on when you were building your business and what you learned from them. And I loved that post because it kind of speaks to what I'm trying to explain, which is that um, is you, I mean, what's a concrete example? The number one thing you said was doing certain things without your authority feeling ready. And you talked about building a website when you weren't ready to. And that's like kind of a thing you learn from like business coaches and from other coaches and other people and business school. And like nowadays, because everything is virtual, it's like you're taught, no, you need this right away. You need this website. And you gave this example of like, if you're not like ready, if you don't feel like ready energetically to like put so much energy into building this website right away, then don't do it right away. It's okay. Like things don't have to follow a certain plan because somebody else said they did.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the beauty of human design is it's just permission to live life authentically as you and make decisions that are probably not going to make sense to the consensus of people around you. They may or may not make sense to your mind, but you still lean in, and it feels really good when you do. And I think the purpose of us being here is really to be conduits for expansion and creativity on behalf of life. And so why not lean fully into that, and why not do it in the most authentic way possible?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and something like, I don't know if you've witnessed this, but something that I see happen a lot in the influencer realm or at coaching realm, and I'm talking like whether it's health coaching or personal growth coaching or whether it's business coaching, but I see, having a very more in-depth understanding of human design, I see how a lot of coaches show up and teach a very specific system and a very specific order of things. Like it's very regimented and it's what worked for them. And that's beautiful. And I know they all mean well and come from a place of love and care. But often what they're doing is disregarding the fact that we are all unique energetically. And so one person might be like, this is exactly what you're going to need to do to be successful because this is what worked for me. But say they're a manifester and then you get a projector that takes their class. And then this person feels like, why is none of this working? And they feel like they're trying so hard and it's not working for them the same way. And it's like, well, you just got this information from somebody who's so different from you. They're a manifester and you're a projector, and it's not meant to be the same approach, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I see that a lot too in the space. And so I think it's like just letting people know, hey, you're unique and you don't have to always do things because somebody else says that's the right order.
Yeah, exactly. And us trying to build businesses based off of the strategy that's worked for somebody else is centering, I think, the wrong thing at the center of your business, which is like, how am I disconnecting from myself to make money? But I think a lot of the reasons that people leave the corporate business space is because they felt disconnected from themselves in the way that they were making money. So we need to solve the issue at some point. We can't reproduce it in a new industry, you know?
Right, because you're saying they leave for the reason they leave ends up being the same thing that happens when they're trying to build their own business.
Yeah.
Same problem. different scenario. That makes so much sense. So this is why I feel like, wow, yeah, having like a human design coach to really just ask the right questions to help guide you rather than tell you how to do things, but like show you insights into like the ways that would be supportive is so powerful. Another thing that you mentioned on that very same post that I'm really excited to get more insight from you on, and I think this is so huge, is you mentioned clear vision, having that you were taught you needed to have a clear vision, and that it's not necessarily like, is it actually as necessary as we've been led to believe? Can you speak to that? Because holy moly, that is totally something that I know I get caught up on that. Like, no, I can't move forward because I don't know I don't have like this perfect clear plan, this perfect clear vision so that I can make my perfect plan and be in perfect control.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you bring that up. That was inspired because of somebody that I have a lot of respect for. But I was just hearing a lot about like connecting with the vision and how does that manifest, and like letting that like guide you. And I was like, I don't have that defined right now. Like the vision isn't there yet. The vision, I really think that the more that we decondition, the more that we realize that, as much as the mind would like to feel like we can plan and control, like I think what we're seeing over the last couple of years unfold on a global level is that things are shifting, and that the systems and structures and this focus and pressure to plan and control for like isn't really sustainable. It's not really feasible. And so as it relates to building a business and having a vision, like I do think that there are like phases that you move through. I think as you are growing a business, I think in the very first like few months, it could be a year, whatever, but the first iteration of your business is really with experimenting with offers that are a modality for you to express your gifts in. You're kind of experimenting with how that feels for you to be in showing up in that offer, how it's being received by clients. You're gathering kind of market feedback from your audience and from your clients. That's giving you insight that's going to eventually build into what may later be labeled as a vision for your business. But depending on your unique energy mechanics, and for generators and manifesting generators who live life in response, I would say it's not the goal to land on a plan or a vision. And if you are feeling pressured to have a business plan or a vision that's well defined, then I would encourage you to challenge that and ask, is somebody telling me this because society told them that they needed to do that? And now I'm ready to, kind of kindly reject that and lean into what feels energetically correct for me and follow my strategy and authority instead. I will say that like a projector, just due to the nature of their role on the planet, may have the ability to see a little bit further ahead than some of the other energy types. That doesn't make it more desirable to be a projector. It just means that they're playing their role. And I think it's really, really important as business owners, entrepreneurs, anybody, that we're playing our role. And that's going to be the place that we feel most empowered, and that's going to be the place that feels the most free, most natural, and where the prosperity is going to come in most easily, because the universe is seeing that you're willing to be in co-creation with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And would you say or agree, through your own personal experience and what you've witnessed, that it's also okay that what once excited us changes? Like maybe today I get a really strong like, and I'm like really excited about something, and that doesn't mean that that's it for the rest of my life. That doesn't mean that's not like this like definitive truth that like that's it, that's like that's everything, that's going to be it for the rest of my life. Like there's nothing wrong with me if 1 year from now I check back in and I'm like, it's exhausting now, like that just doesn't jazz me or excite me the way it used to, and that's okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Because if we come back to the core idea that life wants to expand and create through us, then yeah, that organically is going to evolve and change over time. And it would be really disintegratous for any of us to think that once we lock into and land on a business strategy that feels in alignment with us today, that's going to be sustainable a year from now or 2 years from now, because life is changing and evolving and moving through seasons all around us. And like, we need to be willing to lean into that. And not only like willing to, but that's what feels best. And exactly to like your point, like there may be something as generators that like is exciting or expansive and we're lit up by to begin working on. And we're gaining some skill or mastery through that, but we're not meant to follow that through in perpetuity. That may come back around and become useful at a later point in our business. And we're like, the mind wants to know what that is now, but like what we've been having an entire conversation around is like the mind doesn't get to play authority anymore. Like the mind doesn't need to know the answer to everything. And in fact, the most synchronistic, exciting, expansive moments in my life have been when the mind can't make logical sense of how or why I arrived at the place that I'm at.
I love that so much. Yeah, and we're speaking kind of to business right now, but I think it goes for everything. Hello, it's okay if something initially feels resonant or lights us up and then something shifts. Like that's okay. I see so many people in life that set a goal and then they have that motto or mentality that they absolutely can't quit. They have to like push through and move ahead till they achieve that goal, as if it's a failure to pivot or shift or redirect or like get halfway through and realize that you have a different goal. And it's like, I just want to normalize that that's okay.
Yeah, I love that. We talk about that in a class that I led a few months ago. It's on my website now. It's like a pre-recorded offer, but it's for generators, called Embodied Consistency. And one thing that we talk about in that class is developing the habit of giving yourself permission to quit. And you ask your sacral center, you let your sacral center decide whether you have the energy for something or not, and whether you are making the decision to quit or not. Because if something is feeling frustrating to you, which is like the not self theme of sacral beings, then that's a really great moment to ask yourself, do I want to quit? Yes or no? Is it right for me to quit? Yes or no? Like you'll receive the answer. And then again, it goes back to the trust of following through with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. Chat has definitely been heavily focused on generators, which is totally okay because we're having a chat with 2 generators here. And it is, what is it? About 70% of the population are going to find themselves as a generator of some sort. But you mentioned the not self theme for the generator being frustration. Could you, for everyone listening, just quickly share what the not self themes are for the other types so that people, just for simply insight into what would be like one example in my life that might show me that I'm living misaligned to my truth?
Yeah. So exactly like you said, Chasmith, each energy type in human design has what's called a not self theme. And it's just like an emotional cue that if you can train yourself to be attuned to, it's a signpost that you're off track. And to just help guide you back into alignment. And for generators and manifesting generators, it's frustration. For projectors, it's bitterness. For manifestors, it's anger. And for reflectors, it's disappointment. And so for generators and mani-gens, frustration happens when you're utilizing your sacral energy on a misaligned thing, because we're really meant to be working and creating and building and active throughout the day consistently. And so frustration basically happens when you're working on a really draining task. Maybe you've been in a friendship for a long period of time where you guys are kind of naturally diverging to different paths, and it's starting to feel draining or depleting to show up in that relationship. That's a signpost for you. For projectors with bitterness, since projectors are really here to be leaders, guides, teachers, advisors, they're here to share wisdom with other people because they can see things that the rest of us can't see. But that wisdom or those insights lands and is well received when it's invited and recognized first. And if projectors are sharing out of turn, essentially, which I'm sure every projector listening has had at least one experience where they've shared out of turn and how that has not felt so great, that leads to the not self theme of bitterness. And bitterness can also feel like resentment. If a projector is maybe waiting for the invitation, but is seeing what's happening in a interpersonal dynamic that with two people that they care about, and they want to be able to offer their advice, but it's not being asked for, they might feel a little bit resentful. But that's an opportunity to come back to yourself and say, okay, it's not aligned for me to involve myself in that relationship. So like, let me just focus on myself and what feels good and is lighting me up, and trust that where I'm meant to be of service will evolve naturally through the invitation. And then for manifestors, anger can present because they're such autonomous and independent beings and are really meant to be initiating and orchestrating change and bringing innovation into the world, and not necessarily bringing everything through to completion. Anger can happen when they, even if they do like inform, which helps them execute in alignment with themselves a little bit more easily, is just inform the people closest to them that this is like what they're about to do. If that's not well received, and somebody tries to assert control over a manifestor, that can lead to anger, because manifestors are really not here to live life trying to seek the permission of other people before they go and do the thing. And anger can also arise when they don't have enough alone time, because they have these closed auras that need to spend time alone in their own energy, especially away from sacral energy. And then the last energy type, beautiful reflectors, because they have all open energy centers in their design, they're really meant to play this role or position in life of being kind of like a health evaluator, if you will, of the quality of the energetic states of the people and the environments in their life, because they're serving as the mirrors for the collective, and they're really good at observing. And disappointment can happen when they're observing relationships or environments where things are really unhealthy. And so that's where that disappointment can arise. And what I would suggest for a reflector feeling disappointment is get yourself into a new environment, even if it doesn't need to be as drastic as like physically moving across the country. Although, you know, you may have a desire to do that at some point in life, but like it can be as simple as like going for a drive and going to like a place that like, you know, and love in nature that feels like really good and kind of allows you to discharge the energy that you've picked up from whatever that unhealthy environment is, reset with yourself, and go from there.
Thank you so much for sharing those. I think really helpful for people who are out there listening. And I feel like this is a pretty good place to kind of cut it, just with recognizing the time and respecting that for both yourself and everyone listening. But I would love to ask you the question I ask every listener or every guest, which is if you could only share one message with the world for the rest of your life, what message would you choose?
Find the thing that lights you up and go after it unapologetically.
And we have discussed, obviously, briefly, that you do have your own business that supports people in embodying their design, but could you share a little bit more about what your offerings are and then how people can learn more or connect with you?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Expanded Flow. My website is also the same. And I am launching a bi-weekly newsletter in a couple weeks that's going to provide energy management tips for people in the context of their relationship with work. So one of the first posts will be human design meets home office setup, since I know many of us work remotely, and exploring the different environments in human design. But it's really going to be something that lands in your inbox every couple weeks, and is a resource for you to explore your design through the different lenses that I'm thinking about how we can apply this to our everyday lives. Then if you're curious and working together in a more intimate capacity, I am doing one-on-one sessions right now called Business Flow. And that's where we look at your personal energy framework, utilizing human design through the lens of career, business, work life. So we're looking at how are you managing your energy on a daily basis? What sort of structures do you have in place that support your business in being an authentic expression? Or these can be a good resource for people who are thinking about a career transition or are looking for a promotion into a new role in their organization, or want some support in defining what a role might look like, and then receiving some coaching support in being able to advocate for themselves as well. So I would consider these sessions to be kind of a bridge of like education, coaching, kind of mindset and strategy, depending on just what that person needs. And I created these as really a taste of what it's like to work with me in a deeper mentorship capacity. And right now, I have some space available for somebody who wants to work together in a one-on-one mentorship for either 3 months or 6 months. And that's really what I'm focused on right now, is building this newsletter to be a really valuable resource for people at an accessible price point. These business flow sessions in a one-off capacity, because I know that there is immense value in just having a dedicated 60-minute session to you if you know exactly what you're coming in wanting to address through the lens of human design and business. And then, as a 2-4 profile, I think the greatest impact I'm able to make is really in those one-on-one mentorship containers where we're able to dive deep into your design, into your business, and build a relationship together over time. And that's where you can find me and what I'm currently offering.
I love it. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining me today and sharing all this awesome, juicy, fun stuff, because I think you're really right. Like, I think that there's so much potential in this gift called human design. And I think it really has the ability to transform and shift the world, starting with our individual selves. And I don't know, I'm just really excited about it. I've seen and witnessed so much magic happen in my own life when I'm actually getting recentered and following my design versus, defaulting or slipping back into old patterns of pushing or swimming upstream. So I believe in its magic, and I just really appreciate that you were here today to share everything you've shared with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to connect with you, Chasmith. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm excited for your listeners to hear our conversation and hear what they think.
Yay.
All right, guys, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Once again, whether you're new to human design or whether you're a human design veteran, I do hope that this specific episode gave you some new ideas and insights and ways to approach or understand your design, especially in your career life. If you do have a friend who might benefit from this episode, please remember to share it with that person. And if you would like to support future episodes through my virtual tip jar, you will find a link at the bottom of the show notes called Support This Podcast. Just click that today. You can support this podcast for as little as 99 cents per month, and every cent counts. Everything helps. All right, off to the races. Haha, just kidding. What I meant to say was, now you go do something you want to do, not something that you should do. And until next time, make the week great.